Well, we've been talking about the quarterback position in the Cleveland Browns for 2 months. Certainly covered a lot of names. Are we maybe circling back to what was the original name as a Cleveland Browns target? We'll talk about it. Pete Smith is here. Browns 3D starts now. Back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR, brought to you by State Sharpening, Mower Sales and Service. Continued thanks for the support here. Everybody, getting your daily fill of all your written content from Pete Smith, Jack Duffin, Casey Kinnaman, Fred Greetham, Barry McBride, everybody contributing. You guys are all coming out in spades, obviously, and pouring through it. We appreciate you all for that. Joining us here nightly for the nightly streaming. Browns 3D. You had the React last night. You'll actually have Fred and Barry back this week. Barry was out last week. So make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube to the OBR. And, of course, make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on Twitch. After we left yesterday, and that's usually the way you can count on this stuff is, once you get an episode out, you can usually count on something that happened. Russell Wilson and, Pete and Brad did a fantastic job scrambling in the last couple of minutes to work in that. Obviously, in last night's episode of the React, so Russell Wilson goes to New York. 1 year, 20-something change, actually 10.5 guaranteed. Certainly an interesting dynamic of the New York Giants quarterback room. Wink, wink. If you guys know what I'm talking about, if you know, you know. I guess I just want to do this real quick, Pete, before we circle back, obviously, to the Browns. I said it last night on social media. I'll say it right now. Look, I don't think anybody who's making a decision, and I'll just say Cam Ward, obviously, because he's here, but Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, anybody who's making a decision in regards to either one of those guys, Russell Wilson was not affected in the decision you were making. But does this change anything, Pete, in your opinion? Because if it wasn't the Browns, it seemed really likely it was Shedeur Sanders and the New York Giants. Because I do kind of have a little bit of a theory here with the way things are, working with Shedeur Sanders. Do you think that still is the landing spot for Shedeur Sanders, Pete? Or do you think that maybe the bloom is coming off of the Sanders name a little bit here, and now we got to be factual as we get closer and closer to the draft and what the ultimate outcome will be?
Yeah, my feeling on this is, and I've thought this for a while, is that the Giants are more inclined to take Travis Hunter if he's there and then try to come back up and get Shedeur Sanders later in the round. And if, that could obviously change if the Browns were to do something like take Travis Hunter. I still think the Giants would probably still be inclined to take Abdul Carter or to auction off the pick and then to go get Shedeur Sanders. But just from a pure talent standpoint, everybody seems to understand that it's some combination of Carter and Hunter as the two top guys, and then Cam Ward as a quarterback and everything that entails is good enough that he's right in that mix. That after that, there's a drop off, and you're just sort of trying to figure out where does Ashton Genty go in sort of that next tier. That there are certainly people who believe in Shedeur Sanders, but like by and large, it's people who talk late first or second round picks, and short of a team being desperate, and the Giants would certainly qualify if they were to take him third, that the value is going to sort of play itself out, that Cam Ward's going to be that dude everybody's trying to go get, which in itself is telling you something, and that Shedeur is far closer to Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Tyler Shuck, if you're into the olds, and Twin Ewers and everybody else. And the sheer number of those other guys, including Jalen Milroe's pro day, is going to sort of embolden teams, including the Giants, I think, to wait because there is enough supply where, look, the risk yes, there's a small risk you miss out on Sanders, and unless you absolutely love him, the talent you get out of potentially a Travis Hunter is going to outweigh, plus whatever quarterback you do end up taking is going to sort of outweigh it. And if you're the Giants, and now that you have Russell Wilson and you have Jameis Winston, whatever you want to say for that, and you still have Tommy Cutlets, I guess. If you get Travis Hunter and you come back and get Shedeur Sanders, then Joe Shane is going to look like a hero to that city, and until they actually start playing games. But for that time being, it's going to be pretty sweet. And I've said the same thing in terms of the Browns. If they were to take either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and then find a way up, especially if it's for Shedeur Sanders, because so many people are, certainly passionately arguing for that.
Fixated.
But if they were to get Carter, let's just use him as an example, and then come back up and get Sanders, they would play Shedeur's song at that Journey concert. They would make whatever's left of Journey play his song. So yeah, I mean, but to me, I think everything has sort of been leading to this sort of eventuality that the talent there. Don't get me wrong. There are going to be quarterbacks that are successful from this class, but it's not last year's class. And short of a team being super desperate, they're not going to treat it like last year's class.
Let me ask you this. And, you certainly kind of see this with, Bronny James a little bit. We're going to see this with Shedeur Sanders. We're probably going to see this in a year or two with Arch Manning. But what I'm saying is it a little bit tougher, not for us necessarily, but for national media, because you don't necessarily want to be the guy who starts the critiquing, of somebody's kid who's still highly involved, certainly within the sport of the coverage. What I'm saying? It makes it, because it seems once the first person started to have a couple of negatives with Shedeur Sanders, it kind of seemed like it made it easier for maybe some others to come out. And it seems like, when you're a brand name, not necessarily game, literally just name, it seems like, the coverage and some of the stuff that goes on there, if Shedeur Sanders throws one like Quinn Ewers yesterday, I don't think there are a lot of people throwing out the duck conversation, poll, that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's been really strange because on the one hand, you have people who are saying, Shedeur Sanders is getting over criticized because of the last name. But
I think it's carrying him.
I think there's elements to both sides, but I would contrast that versus Arch Manning has thrown, and I've said this any number of times, he's thrown 95 passes in college. If his name was not Manning,
95 was your favorite?
If his name if Manning wasn't behind that, he would be a very highly touted recruit that has not yet seen the field, and we want to see what he does. But there are people, because of the last name, who don't pay much attention. We're saying, "Oh, tank for Arch Manning." He's not a thing yet. Now, even if and I fully expect he's playing 2 years, because why on earth would you commit to Texas to sit behind Quinn Ewers for multiple years if you were then going to try to get out as fast as possible? You could have gone to any other school and played. And
then handed the job from day one. Yep.
And both his father and his uncle, and both of his uncles, and I assume his grandfather played all, because what was he going to do? Declare hardship coming out of Ole Miss back then? They all stayed to play 4 full seasons in college. So it makes all the sense in the world. It's not like Arch needs to go, he's got to carve out an earning for the family at this point. Like there's no rushing it, but it's weird how this plays out. And people don't realize they're doing it, saying, "Oh, his last name's carrying him. His last name's carrying him." By the way, the Browns look like they're tanking for Arch, or insert team is tanking for Arch. Like these two things clearly are in contrast, and yet it still happens. But I do think there's an element that it does help Shedeur to a point, because I think people would have been more on it, because Shedeur is a talented quarterback prospect. That's not a question. But I think if not for Sanders, I think more people would be inclined to look at him in terms of being evaluated as a second round and late first round, with a couple outliers saying that they really believe in his skill set, which is where we are realistically. I think the Sanders name is pushing him up a little bit in terms of just how he's sort of viewed and the sort of cachet that his name brings with it.
Yeah, and for me, I 100% agree with it, and it's kind of the thought. And I think, the closer and closer we get to this, the truth will, it won't necessarily come out. The truth will basically, the proof in the pudding type of thing by, where he ultimately ends up. If there is only one quarterback in that tier, where does tier 2 even start? And, if it comes to the fact that he's no longer being drafted in the single digits, obviously, it was inflated and it was a difficult spot for a lot of people to talk about. Somebody, certainly a Hall of Famer, somebody who's still highly involved as a collegiate coach, and who knows, maybe one day have aspirations to, take it up one more level.
The Giants.
Yeah, or just stay where you're at, because I think he's doing a pretty good job there, and his idea on the spring game is actually pretty cool as well. We're going to continue on here. We didn't get to the Browns just yet as far as the quarterback, but we will get to that as we can continue on here. Latest Browns 3D. Pete Smith joins us along for the ride. We've been talking for a couple months now, and we're super excited, for the partnership we have with State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. If you are local to the Cleveland area, they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. Listen, you want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State Sharp help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you're looking for a new, dependable time cutter zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from our experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. Veteran-owned, the Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders. They are lifetime Browns fans and proud supporters of us here at the OBR. Again, if you're local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com, STATESHARP.com. Browns 3D continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith in for the ride. Again, thank you, everybody, for all the continued support. Certainly been a wild ride. Today, technically, right around this time, maybe an hour from now, we'll be concluding Day 3, Round 7 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Some thoughts certainly on the draft, but just get to this. Pete, and I know we're both in agreement on this. The great thing about Kirk Cousins and what the major appeal was 2-3 weeks ago was discount double check. I'm getting a veteran quarterback, if healthy, at league minimum. That was the possibility. Now, and I don't know how true it is, maybe the Falcons, maybe it's a third round pick. I got news for you. I'm not even entertaining it unless I can do some sort of, I'll give you this in 2026, and it has a chance to increase in value, because Kirk Cousins, we don't know how healthy he is. And so come October, I'm on to another quarterback because Kirk Cousins is toast. You'll get my payment in 2026. Also having to pay some salary. It just becomes, somebody said, hey, I'm going to make you steak, but you got to eat all the nasty vegetables first before you get to the steak. That kind of feels where it's at with Kirk Cousins. But as much as I want to poke fun at Atlanta for the way they handled all this, if this is the guy for the Browns, Atlanta at least is going to get some sort of relief out of this situation.
Well, at this point, Kirk Cousins is saying he wants to wait till after the draft. And that works. It's frustrating for the Browns on one hand if you're somebody who wants an answer now.
But if there's an agreement that, hey, we have no intention of addressing quarterback at 2, then maybe that stance softens.
See, I look at it as a very nice situation if you're not desperate for an answer to sort of present fans tomorrow, because now you've got a month at least to sort of look at the situation as it stands. How bad do you want Cam Ward? Do you want Joe Flacco? Do you want to, certainly hope you don't go this route, but you could investigate the Carson Wentz's of the world. Do you want to now open up the options to include somebody like Malik Willis? Do you want to, there's one more option which waits even longer than Kirk Cousins, which is Derek Carr. But if you work out a deal for Cam Ward, it's all like the problem sorts itself out. You no longer care. If you don't, and you're sitting there looking and going, well, we're going to try to play this and get Dart or Milroe or see if Shedeur falls and get somebody like that. One, Kirk Cousins can see the landscape and see how threatening it is to him. Two, the Browns will have gotten to use all of their draft picks or done whatever they want to do with those picks. So in other words, if you were to seriously entertain the notion of a third round pick, you would have at least used the 2 you had for this year and been able that. Now you're looking at offering a 2026 pick. Now, what's more likely is the situation you laid out, which is a conditional pick. You're giving, a fourth that could become a third or something like that, or a fifth that becomes a fourth, whatever. That is far more reasonable in that circumstance. But the fact of the matter is now everybody gets to see exactly what has happened in the draft, and the Browns don't have to use any picks, and they get an answer to the quarterback position that probably no one else is pursuing. Like that's the other thing. The one element of obviously $1.255 million would have been the dream, but if he was cut, anybody could grab him. He's now up for anyone. As it is, him sitting in Atlanta like he is, that's probably the Browns are nobody at this point, unless somebody suffers an injury. I mean, the Steelers could theoretically get desperate, but like there aren't a whole lot of options for him in that scenario if he truly wants to be a starter. So that part of it sort of sorts itself out. Is there a financial element of working out, the Atlanta eating more of the money or something along those lines? The Browns can afford it if they want to. The $27 million, I think it is, if they want to go that route. So it sort of works out for the Browns in some ways, even though it is an extraordinarily unsatisfying answer to say, we're going to wait until after the draft to finally get the quarterback that's going to start when we already have the rookie in place, theoretically, and all these other elements to it. So they get a month to see if something else is more appealing to them. Dak Prescott's out there. You never know. But it's not a great situation from a fan perspective. It's not a great situation from us covering it and saying we've got to continue to wait for this thing and we've got no answer. But on some level, it does work out for the organization.
Thank you for setting me up here for a perfect nice and easy segue. And this is now, look, I mentioned that we are literally 1 month from the draft concluding for a reason. This team and its roster still now needs to add 1, 2, possibly 3 quarterbacks, possibly 2 running backs, 1, most likely 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, an offensive tackle, a defensive end, perhaps a defensive tackle, 2 safeties. Pete, when do we hit, the light of concern that, it's 1 month away? And I mean, look, it's great that they got 10 picks, but the list of things and needs that I just kind of rattled off here, I don't see a way that, the 10 picks are going to fix all of that. And of course, there's no guarantee you're going to hit on all 10 of the picks, not you expect to hit on the signings or whatever. But it still seems like there is a lot of heavy lifting that kind of needs to be done here to this roster within only a month.
Oh, they definitely have to have needs that they need solved. Obviously, the Nick Chubb thing still hanging out there. Safety is obviously a big one. Tight end could be an issue. Now, we've reported and talked about the potential of talking to the Raiders about getting tight end help there. That is certainly an avenue they could go. But here's the thing. Just looking at free agency in general, and certainly the Browns are part of this, it's been a slog for the entire league, unless you're the Patriots. Unless you're the Patriots,
and had 120 million to burn. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even they are still sort of slowly, they just got the Stephon Diggs deal done. But like for most teams that are like cost conscious, like the Baltimore Ravens, have barely done anything. They reportedly signed Cheeto Uzie at corner this week, but like it's slow for everybody, and in some ways, that's an interesting sort of opportunity for the Browns because, and I've talked about this before, and D'Anthony Bell has signed with Seattle Seahawks. He is the perfect example of what the Browns might want to do. Now, listen, if the Browns I've undoubtedly made offers to players. The second they say yes, it's done. But if they're going to wait and potentially wait till after the draft, the Browns can go in with their 10 picks and do what they're going to do. Beyond that, though, if they haven't filled the roster, which they've done in the past, they've sort of left little spots open. They then open themselves up for undrafted rookies. And
D'Anthony Bell, Mahmoud Diabate, etc.
D'Anthony Bell was 3 years ago. They signed him as an undrafted free agent out of West Florida. He stuck for 3 years. The year after that, they got both Ronnie Hickman and Mahmoud Diabate. So they've been doing this thing where they sort of set it up, and they've had a decent hit rate of getting guys that not just like interesting signings, but guys who make the active 53 roster from that standpoint. This past year, it was they had Javion Cohen and who am I missing? I think it was another lineman. But in any case, they've done this in the past. So if the Browns are sitting here with holes on the roster, they can sort of sit here and see what's out there. Like if Nick, I'm hoping Nick Chubb decides like right now he wants to resign and we can get that done. But if not, one, I think the Browns need to draft 2 running backs. But while we're here, they could bring a third one that's undrafted, and because there's a spot there until there isn't. So I think, and we've talked about this in previous years with some of these situations where there's a little bit of pressure that builds up on some of these players where you're sitting there going, I should probably sign, because if I don't, I may be waiting until an injury or, during the season to hopefully, get a job. So on the one hand, yes, I would love nothing more. Justin Simmons, come on down as an example of a safety that could, stabilize the back end since moving on from Juan Thornhill. And because they've lost D'Anthony Bell, like they've got a couple, 2-3 spots they want to fill at that position. But if they don't, and we're still sitting here, in the early part of May, then bring in a bunch of these, undrafted guys. It's going to give somebody like Anthony Kendall more of an opportunity to sort of see if he can, make enough of an impression to earn a roster spot. The former BW Yellow Jacket who signed as a free agent, like we all want the answers now. And I'm right there with you, everybody else on that, but like, it's not the end of the world that they aren't getting everything they want. And, you're seeing the patience sort of pay off in certain respects. Cornelius Lucas, the Chevin Jenkins deal, which is really interesting. Jerome Baker seemingly assigned for the league minimum as a linebacker, and everybody's super excited about that move. Yep. Like, you allowing these things to sort of play themselves out does end up in a situation where the Browns can get some nice opportunities. So again, it's not going to make anybody feel good. And as we sit here today, I'm looking at a 4th place roster, but it does at least give them some flexibility in terms of how they want to address these things in the draft and then soon after.
Now, you, me, and the others here at the OBR, we kind of talked a little bit about, the Browns and, their presence, or non-presence, I should say, at the Miami Pro Day. Then, of course, the next day, Tennessee kind of saying, or how it came out, which kind of seemed, and I know you and I agreed on this, what would it take to maybe get you off of one? Well, King's ransom, obviously. That's what it would take. But the Browns do go meet with Cam Ward, work with Cam Ward. My belief here is, and I got to be honest, I think my belief here is, and I've said this before, I think this was really tough because unlike last year, say you were Denver last year, say you were Atlanta last year, you never went, ogling over Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. You realized that was not your market. That was not going to be your opportunity. But you were allowed to look at the other group. Everybody kind of grouped this as just 2 QBs. So for a team like Cleveland, if you established full and flat out that Cam was the guy, was the better guy, was the guy you believed in, with only one other alternative, but basically you just pair these guys against each other and you basically declared a victor, it becomes more difficult to then say, okay, well, we can just take Shedeur. Because you would have, especially with an analytic room, you'd have 20 guys going, wait a minute, we just spent 2 weeks saying, well, he's not the guy. So now we're just going to take him? So I do think there is that theory there. My thinking is by working out with Cam Ward, maybe you think there's still a slim sliver of a chance something happens. But I also think you wanted to see Cam Ward work out because I believe they're all going to head on out April 4th. I think you wanted to see and make absolutely sure you knew he was the dude before you go see the other guy work out and then say, you know what, that's the final confirmation. The one is clearly better than the other one, so that's why we don't take the other one at 2. Not that we wouldn't have interest, but it's just not a 2-man party. It was a 1-man party the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of time and energy teams are putting into Cam Ward tells me it's him. Beyond just how teams are.
You brought the video team. You brought your own video team. That sounds like this is, as soon as the pick is announced, this is going on social media. This is going on YouTube. It'll be scheduled to be released by the Tennessee Titans. They're planning ahead. It seems pretty. You're not just going to throw the footage away. You know what? Everything. And what do? Do you call Colorado? Do you call Penn State? There's no way to redo this. It really sounded to me like that was a real confirmation.
Well, the other part of this is take it from the Browns' perspective. Let's say the Browns had won and they hadn't made a firm decision and they're sort of keeping the door open. What would it take for you to give up a quarterback you really like and need, I've seen,
at least 2 cracks to get another quarterback in the next few years.
Would a couple third-round picks and a 4th do it for you? Of course not. You would need a very, very convincing offer, the Godfather offer, so to speak. And that seems to be the only thing that the Titans are doing here. Now, is there a space where the Browns, that price is within the Browns range and is going to beat out the Giants? Because the Giants have reportedly already made a push for this, which, again, I think tells you something. If they were perfectly content to just sit there and take Shedeur Sanders, and I understand they have to sort of go, well, the Browns might take him. You're not trying to get to 2. You're trying to get to 1. It sort of gives you the clear opinion that it's everybody. Maybe there's a team out there that has Shedeur higher, but pretty much league wide, it's Cam Ward and then everybody else. So that is something else that's sort of being read into here. And if it ultimately ends up being Cam Ward to the Titans, as they just signed Tim Boyle, so that's that maybe that's it. Maybe Tim Boyle's going to carry this thing for a year. But if it goes as everybody expects and the Titans take Cam Ward, it just again makes you think that no, it's not going to be Shedeur at 2 and potentially not 3 either. And then we're going to be sitting here going, we're going to do the Aaron Rodgers type watch or Brady Quinn or any of those where we're sitting there going, when's he going to go? When's he going to go? And I fully expect at that point, at some point you're going to get somebody insert team traded up. And that's going to be, in some ways it's almost better if the Giants do take Shedeur, because that would suggest that at least there's one less team potentially trying to call up and negotiate a trade. Whereas now you sit here and going, teams are sort of jockeying against each other to sort of lower the price, where now they can sort of jockey against each other to raise the price because they know they've got multiple teams trying to vie to get these spots potentially ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who picked 21.
Now, Josina Anderson, and her best Jarvis Landry imitation as far as, tweets. And of course, I think you always have to run these things first circle. Browns are in on Sanders. Browns maybe aren't in on Sanders. Oh, you know what? Maybe the Browns are going to trade the pick. Is there? And look, you and I are stout as far as what we think Abdul Carter could be, and the prospect of Abdul Carter, Miles for 5 years, Abdul Carter, Miles, McGuire for at least 2 years. I mean, there's just so much there. So much appeal to it. Any possibility that you move down, and what would be the floor to move down? Because look, we don't know anything yet. Friday's the day. If Abdul Carter, and they just say he can't work out because we're still going to wait the medical recheck, I think that's going to maybe give some people some pause and hesitation. For me, no, it's not going to. But, Friday will be, the determining day. Is there anything? But then again, with that, though, is what are anybody who's trading up for?
Yeah, so there's a couple problems here. First, let's not rule out the possibility it's Travis Hunter. Now, my whole hang up with Travis Hunter is if I'm taking Travis Hunter at 2, I need him to be an elite wide receiver. Talk to me about defense in year 3.
Amon St. Brown. He needs to be Jamar Chase. He needs to be Justin Jefferson. It needs to be 116 and double-digit touchdowns. That's who he needs to be if he's going to go.
And that needs to be, and I hope that was covered, and I would assume it is, with teams that are meeting with him, are saying, listen, this is what we want to do. Are you going to be okay with this? And if he goes to the Browns and says, look, I'm going to be an elite receiver, I'm going to be, one of the best in the league, and I'm going to force you to put me on defense to close out a game at safety, corner, whatever, fine. But you cannot take him and try to have him learn 2 positions in the NFL as a rookie. It's irresponsible and impossible to do that and get any of the appropriate return on that, because here's what's going to happen. Even if he was going on one side of the ball, he's probably going to experience some rookie struggles. If he's doing that and he's on both sides of the ball, and this is whether the Browns or anyone else, everybody's going to get out there and go, well, this is because you're doing this with him and you should have done this, and everybody's going to second guess and get on their high horse and tell the Browns or whoever it is that takes Travis Hunter how they should handle the situation. Eliminate all that. Make him say, hey, we want you to be a wide receiver, the best wide receiver you can possibly be, and then we'll talk about defense. And if he's cool with that, then at least that's a consideration. Now, to the trade point. Here's the problem I have with trading. You have to get an Abdul Carter's or Travis Hunter's worth in a trade down. Like, you can't just go down 5 spots. 2 3s
and a 4. Yeah.
You just can't, because you are giving up Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter because they're there, and everybody is saying the same thing. These are the 2 guys, and Cam Ward to a certain extent, but these are the 2 guys that everybody should want. So you've got to get a huge haul. Now, the problem simultaneously with that is, particularly with Abdul Carter, not that he's not good enough, because he's phenomenal, but there are so many talented pass rushers that you may sit to yourself, why am I giving up an extra first-round pick when I can just we've checked out everything in the background, we really like Mike Green, or we love Donovan Ezeraku, or we're willing to roll the dice on Shamar Stewart, or there's so many that you're looking at. And even though Abdul Carter is, depending on who you talk to me, I think he's in that, from stuff you can prove, a Von Miller level prospect or Micah Parsons level prospect. Even if you think he's Josh Hines Allen, that's a hell of a player to have. A guy who's who's gotten 15 sacks. You have to get that kind of return on that. Or if it's Travis Hunter, because everybody's going to go, oh man, the Browns got, a couple thirds, or they got a second round pick to move down. And then in 2 years, you're sitting here going, Abdul Carter just had 18 sacks, or Travis Hunter just had 1,700 yards. And we got a good player, but look at these guys. Like that is inherently where I think it's going to be really tough to move. Now, is that to say that it can't happen? Of course not. But I just think it's a really difficult sort of thing to sort of pull off. It is so much easier when we are talking about a quarterback, because everybody can sort of talk about just how important that is and how much of a game changer it is. But and again, I found this a befuddling trade at the time. But the thing that jumps out to you immediately when you're talking about potentially giving up all these picks for a guy like a defensive end is Marcus Davenport. When the Saints traded a first-round pick to move up the board to go get Marcus Davenport and he's had a couple of nice seasons, most of them not with the Saints. Like there's just that risk involved is huge for position players when most of the part, and Jack Duffin is probably pumping his fist somewhere going, yeah, you want to trade down to get more swings at these type of players, not trade up for them. So maybe there's somebody that's willing to do it. Maybe there's somebody who says Travis Hunter is just that special. We have the perfect setup for him. We're willing to go all in because we think he is a two-way guy. It's really difficult for me to foresee a situation where either the Browns are going to get enough to give up that talent, or that you're going to be happy with it in a couple of years down the road, or that a team is going to be willing to pay up enough to go get one of those players.
My final note, and in regards to Hunter and the two-way thing is it all sounds great, and even if you dabble into it and it does kind of work out, what happened when he's dinged up? What happens if he gets significantly hurt? Now you take a serious hit, and you're talking about a guy who potentially is either your wide receiver 1 or at worst your wide receiver 2, and a guy that you thought was a significant player in your nickel and dime situations. Playing in both ways, the fear of something happening to him, for me, really could probably hamstring your team on both sides of the ball. And again, I agree with you. Rookie year in the NFL, it's one or the other. And you want to know what? It's real easy to say, hey, there's 45 seconds left in the clock. Travis, go play, deep, middle, and just look for the ball. Well, that's okay.
Let's look at it from this standpoint. The people who want to compare him to Shohei Ohtani, right? Shohei Ohtani has to have Tommy John surgery. Great. Like it sucks, but he can still DH as he's recovering from that.
True.
If Travis Hunter pulls a hammy and misses, 3 weeks of camp, a relatively minor injury, and you're trying to have him go two ways, like it's not like the hamstring only affects one half of his game. Everything he does to every nick on his body hurts him on both sides of the ball. It's he's not playing positions where he's not punting. He had all of these things are super intensely physical activities, and he missed 13 games in college. And I'm not suggesting that he's injury prone or weak or anything else. He's a phenomenal athlete, but everything he does through that lens is doubled. And you need this guy to be a superstar at that level. And the second he goes down, takes an awkward step doing a DB drill, everybody sphincter tightens and goes, we got to get him off the side of the field, get him purely on wide receiver drills. I mean, there's so much involved. At Colorado, one, they hadn't been good for a while. And so like anything he did was great. In the NFL, and you could say the Browns haven't had anything, this, that, and the other. I don't care. It's the NFL. Like the novelty will wear off, and people will get very tired of this crap if he can't deliver on this stuff and he's nicked up. Like it will sit here and people will just be pissed. And you feel bad for the kid because he is such a tremendous athlete, but it's football and a collision sport. And you don't want to lose any reps on as a receiver if he's that good, because you're messing around where he's maybe a pretty good DB occasionally.
Yeah. And the other thing is, this seems like a conversation you would have over maybe a day 3 guy. Hey, you know what? He long snaps. Hey, he's been a linebacker. He played 1,000 special teams reps in college. This is why I like him over, X, Y, and Z. All the players are equal, but you know what? I find a role where I have actually, as a rookie on day 3, he's going to be on the field 17, 18, 19 times, something like that. Look, if you're going to draft Hunter, just make him a wide receiver. Just that's it. Whatever team does it, just make him a wide receiver.
And he has to be good with that. That's the part I worry about, because to this point, whether it was the combine, whether it's been Deion Sanders, or just hell, his national Nike or his Dick's ad, they're showcasing these two guys. And at the combine, he said, "Hey, people are asking, what about, being a returner or whatever, and him saying he's already got 2 jobs. Like, is he immovable off this position that he's absolutely determined to do it? And who knows, maybe through talking to these teams, he's finding out that nobody's interested in this arrangement.
True.
But nevertheless, you've got to sit there and it's just unrealistic. Several years in the league, great. Deion Sanders had 60 receptions in his career going, as a receiver. It's an incredibly difficult thing. And if he's that good, if Travis Hunter is that good, any defensive reps he takes are offensive reps he's potentially not taking for you when he's that good at the position. So you're hurting yourself that way. There is certainly a scenario, you're up late, last drive of the game, you can play that out and it makes sense, but there's a lot of risk for that reward that I don't think is worth it, at least in the immediate.
Yeah, I mean, because you just say it's my number 2 overall pick, and one of them, these things is good enough, or if he's 3, 4, 5, whatever, just one of them has to be good enough. You just don't want to kind of dabble with it because he should have been good enough to warrant the pick one way or the other. Again, Old Sport, look, it's still, less than a month out. There's times where it feels like it's 4 months away. There's times where it feels like it's 4 hours away. But continue getting towards the 2025 NFL draft. Browns still with some work to do, and we'll obviously be here to monitor and cover everything for you. Make sure you're reading daily written work over at the OBR. Make sure you're coming out every night starting at 6 o'clock for the nightly streaming, starting with Browns 3D. You will get Fred and Barry after us tonight. This has been Browns 3D on the OBR, brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. Again, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Pete, for joining us. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR, and we'll talk to y'all tomorrow.